Hi guys, just wanted to do a little video on coat maintenance on especially coats like Lokie's here. He is a golden retriever poodle mix, also known as a golden doodle. His coat is a little bit more poodly, so it tends to get very curly, very tight, but he definitely also has those golden undertones where he does still shed, and so that does get in there and kind of mats everything up. So I just want to go through a couple different tools that you guys can use at home to maintain those coats and hopefully keep them mat free and knot free until groomers open back up through this pandemic. And that way your dog isn't going to be hopefully naked with all the mats and everything. So that way they'll just look a little bit like a Wookiee, but they'll be mat free, they'll be feeling good, hopefully prevent any sort of skin issues that go along with dogs getting all matted up. So on a coat like Lokie, he's been groomed. It's probably about a week and a half ago now. He hasn't been bathed since, so he's a little bit grimy, not too bad. His coat's starting to curl up a little bit. You can see how it's just kind of a little bit curly. It's not that straight that you get when you get your dog fresh back from the groomers. So as it starts to curl up, it is a little bit harder to maintain, but not impossible. So what I typically tend to start with, which I've already got a little bit of Lokie hair in here, is what we call a slicker. And this probably looks pretty familiar to a lot of you. If you've ever been to the groomers and you tell the groomer that you brush your dog every day and they still tell you that your dog is matted close to the skin, and this is all that you're using, that's probably why. This is really great at helping to remove a lot of the little knots and snags and fluff out that top coat, just that sort of that top layer, but it doesn't get down to the skin, and it's not going to get through anything that's more than just a tiny tangle or a snag. So if there's anything else, it'll just kind of keep building and building, and this isn't going to do a whole lot. But I do really like using this to break up some of that top coat. That way when you get your comb through, which is the next tool I have here, is your metal comb, also known as a greyhound comb. These are really awesome for getting all the way down to the skin and helping to prevent mats. Because that way, if this doesn't go through, clearly you have an issue and you want to keep working on it. So we're going to start a little bit here. Jeeves, lay down. Sorry, my helpers are not being very helpful. Jeeves, lay down. So I'm going to take this right over here just to the main part of his body, just so you can kind of see, and take this over. And I'm just going to run this through. And it goes through pretty easily because, again, it's not going to stop. It's not going to get caught. It really doesn't get stuck anywhere. It just kind of, it'll get through the small stuff. If there's anything bigger, it's just, these are going to bend and it's just going to kind of go pretty much right over it. So it's pretty easy to use, and you can just take it all over the coat. You can see how fluffy and nice that makes it look, and why you could be tricked into thinking that that is doing the trick in brushing your dog. Then comes the metal comb, and you're going to see that to start, it's a little bit harder to go through. It's getting caught on some of that undercoat that's trying to shed out, on some of those knots and tangles that are a little bit deeper than where that slicker could get. And we're just going to kind of go over this area. I'm just doing this one patch just to show you, although you want to go over every inch of your dog with both of these tools. And then you can kind of do it until eventually you start to see it sticking a little bit. I'm going to try to just very gently work that out. You'll be a good boy, Lokie. Until you can get all the way through pretty effortlessly. And this is going all the way down to skin. And you can see how much fuzz came up. And this is only after a week of being groomed. All right. Get that off. Static. So you want to make sure also that your comb is going straight down on the fur. Don't have it at sort of a weird angle. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. You just saw me put that comb all the way through. If you stick it at a weird angle, it's going to catch itself, and it's going to kind of kink, and it's going to be really hard, and it's going to be really uncomfortable for your dog. So you want to make sure that you don't have your comb at a weird angle. You just have it straight down, going all the way to the skin. Now, if you're familiar with the comb, you might be familiar with this little guy. This is what is called a face or a finishing comb. And you can see that the teeth on here are way closer together than on the big one. And the reason for that is it's supposed to be for dogs who have really fine hair, or what I really like to use these for is in between grooms, You get your dog with some eye boogies, and you get a wet paper towel and you kind of wipe those off a little bit, but you still get the chunks sometimes. And if you just take that comb and you just kind of brush that through, which he doesn't have any right now because a little OCD, you just take those through and comb that out. If you've already used a little bit of warm water to kind of loosen those eye boogies, that should slide right out with that nice metal comb, especially while you can't have your groomer shaving that out and that hair is going to get longer and longer. That way you can just comb that right out, get rid of those eye boogies. You want to make sure that that's something that you're really staying on top of. It seems like it's a little bit gross and maybe not really necessary, but they can get really, really nasty infections. They can get, abscesses and all kinds of goofy things going on if that builds up too much. It irritates the skin underneath and can cause some serious issues. So make sure that you're really on top of that. If you need to, you can always use, I always say beards are made for grabbing. You can always grab a little bit of beard very gently, and you can kind of use that to help control your dog's head. You can do one of these. There's lots of different holds that you can do. Another thing you're going to want to make sure you do is get over by these lips. You get all that gross, just sticky grime. You can see he's got some chunks of, I'm not going to guess what here, but a lot of that's caused from saliva and the hair, and it sticks together. And again, this is only after a week. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use my slicker to help break the tangles and some of those small little knots in that top coat. Get that through, and once that's nice and fluffy and going through pretty easily, I know, I'm combing your face. I'm gonna take this comb through, and I'm gonna try to get all that out, being very gentle. Now, if you're having a lot of resistance, you're gonna wanna brush it. Ladies, you should know what I mean. If you got a knot in your hair, you're not gonna start all the way from the top. You're gonna work from the bottom and kind of work your way up. It's the same thing with these guys when you've got that longer hair. You can start from the bottom, and once that's free from tangles, then you can start to work your way up. So if you have a lot of tangles, work from the bottom up. Don't try to just push it through, because that's not gonna feel very nice for the dog, and it's also gonna potentially make those knots and those mats a little worse and a little harder to get out. Hi, buddy. Once I've got this all nice, and this is going through, well, it's just not quite there. There we go. Now that's going through nice. See how it's going through pretty effortlessly? Then I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna go down the lips a little bit. And you're gonna wanna be very careful, because if there's big knots in there, you don't wanna just yank them out. You're gonna be just very gentle and going down little by little, not moving on so you've got the rest of it out, and going over and over and over and over and over it. I always tell people that brushing is about 80% of a groom. And then, I don't know if you can tell from there, but there's a lot of kind of red, gooey, also just some kind of chunks, all that from his face. If we go back and look, there's still a little bit there. Some of this you can just kind of, now that it's loose, you can just kind of pull that out. And if you need to, you can lift that lip up and comb that out. And once you get that comb all the way through, there we go. That's a little bit better. You can see how much, maybe, he's being cooperative, come here. You can see how much less gross that is there, and you can get that comb through. One of the spots that you're also gonna wanna really focus on is underneath their jaw. So right in here, in that jaw line, you wanna make sure that you really get in here, because a lot of times it's missed during brushing, it gets wet when they drink water, it knots all up, and it just turns into a giant mat and often has to be shaved. So that's one spot you're really gonna wanna focus on. You can just very gently take their chin and kind of take it up, and then just work down here. And if you have their face all the way up like this, it tends to tighten those skin flaps down here a little bit, so you're a lot less likely to kind of accidentally snag any sort of skin flaps on their neck. Another spot to focus on would be the ears. What you're gonna, thank you, Loki. What you're gonna wanna do is, his ears are pretty short right now, but you're gonna take your slicker and you're just gonna kind of go over it, making sure you get all those tiny little snags, and make sure you get behind the ear. Don't just kind of do the ear and leave this spot. You want to make sure that you get all that up. Then flip that ear over and get the inside. Don't forget to get the inside of the ear. It's just as important as the outside. And you get that ear and get all that nice and fluffed out. handy dandy comb. You take that through and make sure that you're feeding that tip of that ear, so that anything past the ear leather, it's gonna be really hard to kind of get your comb through, because it's just gonna wanna just slide right off. And by the ear leather, I mean the actual skin of the ear itself. So his ear leather goes to about here, and the rest of this is just hair. There's no skin past here. So I'm gonna kind of take my comb down, and I'm gonna use my fingers to kind of feed that hair into the comb, because I want it all to go through that comb. The tip of the ear is a really common spot for mats, and it can cause a lot of issues. So if you have a lot of knots or mats here, you want to make sure that you're really being thorough and combing these out. It's a really dangerous place to try to brush actual mats out of. So a lot of times, if the mats are to the skin, as a groomer, we're just going to shave them. We're also going to warn you about hematomas, and that can cause a whole nother slew of health problems. So you want to be very thorough in doing those ears, both, again, outside and the inside. All the edges, you want to get every inch, all right? Every inch of those ears, especially behind, because this is what they would call a friction point, right behind these ears. And it's not just doodles or dogs with hair. Anybody with a golden, a Newfie, long-haired shepherd, pretty much anything with that long, fine hair on those ears that have floofy ears, I'm sure you've seen those big old ball knot mats that just get behind those. And so you want to make sure you take that comb through. And honestly, even if you're not brushing your dog every single day, I would at least take a comb through right behind the ears, because again, that's another sensitive place with really thin skin that we're not going to brush mats out of. We're just going to shave them out, because that's the safest thing to do. Other friction points that you want to be careful about are often places. Think about the places that when your dog comes home from the groomer, they're pretty much bald there. All right, so the armpits, the groin area, back by the butt, right underneath the tail. So right over here, come here. I know. Right underneath this tail right here, super common spot for matting, because nobody thinks to brush right here. You want to be very careful of that, because especially being back in an area where, come here, bud, Lokie, come here. Good boy. Being back in an area where they go to the bathroom, you can get stuff stuck in there, especially if, let's say your dog gets diarrhea, they get a little bit of that stuck in one of the mats, or they get a lot of mats down here and they pee on it. It can cause a lot of skin issues if they go to the bathroom and it gets stuck in a mat or to their fur, and it's just sitting on their skin. Which brings up another point. If you need to bathe your dog, especially if they've got a coat like this, once your dog is dry, you absolutely must brush your dog out from head to toe, every inch of them, as soon as they are dry. The hair tends to the water tends to curl that hair together, and that's often how you get dogs who end up super matted, especially as they get longer and fluffier. You can also use different things. You can use a little bit of conditioner if you want. You just want to make sure you rinse all that out so they don't get super greasy. One of the things that I like to use on dogs like Lokie is something called the Stuff. It's a finishing spray. So once I've rinsed all the shampoo out and rinse, and made sure that every possible bit of shampoo is off of their skin and fur and coat, I'm going to towel dry them really well, and then I'm going to have a little bottle like this, or you can buy the Stuff in a spray bottle, because it dilutes. You can mist that over, you rub that all into their fur, you get them nice and dry. Now obviously you're probably not going to have a dryer like we would have at a groomer's, but you're not going to want to use your hair dryer. I would honestly recommend towel drying them the best you can with a few towels. If they've got a crate or somewhere penned off, like a little room, you've got a nice big old box fan or something like that, use something like that to keep the air flowing, so that helps them dry fairly quickly. Once they are completely dry, don't try brushing them while they're wet. Otherwise it tugs a lot more, and it's really tough on their skin. Once they are 100% dry, go back through. Go with your slicker, go with your comb, every inch of them, top to bottom. Dogs like this too, check their feet in between their pads. Since those aren't getting shaved out, they get really gross and messy, and a lot of times they get a lot of knots and mats with weird sticks and just random bits of crap from outside. stuck in there, and that can irritate their feet, especially this time of year when it's super wet. Those mats start to get wet, and it's just basically like having a wet rag in between their toes every day, all day, and that can really, really, really make them raw and irritated. And then I would say one last little video tidbit on this one is also ears. So ear care is just as important, especially again, let's say you need to bathe them. You get them brushed out head to toe. Don't forget to clean their ears out. Especially with doodles like this, you probably can't tell from there, but his ears are pretty gross. I don't know if you can see that there's a bit of brown in there. It's pretty grody. His ears were just cleaned out a week ago. Doodles especially just tend to get really gross ears, but pretty much any dog that has floppy ears that aren't perky, and they've got lots of fuzzy, furry stuff, it traps moisture. So if they get the tiniest bit of bacteria in there, they've got moisture, it just explodes with ear infection. So one of the things that I like to do is get a really good quality, do not use anything water-based, a really good quality ear cleaner. You can get some cotton balls, literally any cotton ball will do. If you have a dog this size, I would use something like these are the jumbo ones, so they work pretty well so that I'm not losing cotton balls in his ear canal. But if you have a smaller dog, stay here. Let's see if I can open this. There we go. So these nice big normal sized kind of cotton balls. If you've got something Misha size, come here Misha, come here. Let me see your beautifulness. Come here. Come here. If you've got something a bit smaller, then you're gonna want, which I threw a few in here, something that's a bit smaller. So these are not quite as jumbo, and sometimes I'll still even rip these in half. But what you can do, thank you. Okay, I know, using and abusing you. Using and abusing. So what you can do is one of two things, and some of that just depends on your dog and how they're gonna react to having their ears cleaned out, is you can put the cleaner directly on the cotton ball, and don't just use a tiny little bit, I mean, saturate that sucker. And then you're going to go down in here, and you're gonna go down and back. Do not go forward. So again, same way that if you stick a little, Q-tip in your ear and you push it too far, you're gonna hit your eardrum, you're gonna hit lots of things in there that are not meant to be touched. You don't wanna do that to your dog either. Carson, lay down. My help is, again, not very helpful. But what I really like to do with these guys, especially when they're super gross like Lokie's, and they have constant issues, is to just flush everything out in there. So I'll pour some directly, which he's pretty used to. I'll pour some directly into there, and I'm gonna close his ear up, and I'm gonna massage the base of that ear. Because what that does, that liquid's in there, and you're kind of massaging that around, it helps to loosen that up. I know. He desperately wants to shake his ear right now. If I do that, I'm gonna take it right to the face. There we go. You can see it's all shiny and wet. And then again, we're gonna go down, and we're gonna go back, and you can see it starts to get all this gross stuff out. And you might need to use several cotton balls. I would not say clean until there's nothing left. I would say keep an eye on your dog's ear, because if they're really, really gross, they might get too irritated before they get clean. So don't worry about doing it all in one go. You're gonna wanna get into all the little crevices, all the little holes up here, just not even necessarily down deep, because a lot of that too, again, if you pour that directly in there, you rub that around. One of the things I like to do is I'll do that 2 or 3 times where I'll pour that in there, I'll massage that, I'll do the other ear, massage that, I'll let it sit for a minute, and then I release the dog's head so that he can shake. You can see him kind of doing this like he wants to shake his ear out. And that way, they just kind of use centrifugal force to just send all that crap flying out of their ears. And it's a little bit more gentle, and you don't have to go as deep. But as far as all of these little crevices and crannies and just all this little lumps and bumps and stuff in those ears, you want to make sure you get all that clean, and then you can let them shake their head. Thank you. If you have any other questions, if I've missed something, if you have a different type of coat that you're not sure how to take care of, go ahead and send me a message or reply to this video, and I'd be happy to follow up. This is just kind of a general how to maintain a coat that is already not too bad. Hoping a lot of you guys are not too far out from having me into the groomers. Yeah, again, just shoot me a message, comment, and thank you, Lokie. And let me know what else you guys want to hear about during this quarantine time.